ball like Carl Malone, pain and drink come give me. Them no bad like Pampute. No farmer talk at all, Sunday bad boy give me. Me bad all when me higgle. Any boy see.
Good afternoon, Nevis. Good afternoon, the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. And good afternoon, world. We are bringing you a live show this afternoon. On this date, 14 years ago, Nevis suffered the loss of Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, first Premier of Nevis. And we pause every year on this day to pay tribute and to remember the man for all that he did to lay the foundation and to help to make modern Nevis. And so this afternoon we'll be listening to some of his speeches. And of course we'll be hearing from you. And we thank you. We thank everybody for being a part of this show. Tell your friends that from now until at least the next 2 hours, 2020, we'll be remembering Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, man who was in private practice, enjoying his life, when in 1970 he was asked to lead the Nevis Reformation Party. A party that had been in the making. There had been several discussions, and I like to reflect on discussions with Mr. Ivor Stevens and, of course, Mr. Ural Swanston. Swanee said that they met all over Nevis, up in the hills, in the bushes, away from the prying eyes of those persons who were minding their business and relaying information on what was happening in Nevis to the government down in St. Kitts. Nevis Reformation Party is a party that came out of strife, out of suffering, out of the hardships, and some brave men and women who decided that they wanted to take greater control of the affairs of Nevis, and that they wanted to be in a position where they can do more. And how did they plan to do more? By having a party in Nevis that would be able to control the affairs of Nevis. Mr. Ural Swanston told me on several occasions that the people of Nevis had lost confidence in people like Eugene Walwyn. Walwyn, who, when it was opportune for him, crossed the floor and joined with the Labour Party at a time when Nevis were looking to go in a different direction to that which was being provided by the ruling party in St. Kitts. And by 1970, the people of Nevis had seen the actions taken by the people in Anguilla, who had decided, listen, enough is enough, and we don't want to be a part of this three-island state. and that they wanted to look after their own affairs and were prepared to do so with even less than the people of Nevis had. And so in 1967 they went their own way. There are many scholars who believe that the sinking of the MV Christina, a badly overloaded government-operated ferry, was the last straw. And then after that, the people of Nevis decided, listen, enough is enough. Time for us to have a political party from people among us and people who we can trust. And so the discussions happened, some heated, some less so. And the party was formed, and then they went in search of a leader. I am reliably advised, and I verily believe, that Mr. Cecil Byron of late and blessed memory was one of the persons who was seen as a potential leader. I don't know, for some reason they wanted a lawyer. And so they approached Mr. Byron, who showed no interest. And then they approached Simeon Daniel, who had returned from his studies in England in '66. And at first he was reluctant. But according to Ivor Stevens, they were persistent. And they kept asking him, please, take a serious look at it. We have done the hard work. We have formed the party. We are ready to go. We want you to be the leader. And so it was in time that Dr. Daniel decided yes, and he became the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party and led the party from 1970 until 1992. We're going to hear some of the stories of some of the excellent work that he did in that time. And I'm expecting a telephone call from Mr. Joseph Parry, himself a former Premier of Nevis. And Mr. Parry is going to help to lay the groundwork, the foundation where Nevis was, and how Dr. Daniel and his team were able to pull Nevis out of the darkness and into glorious light. I want you to hear this first of all and see if it sounds familiar to you.
You know, you Ghanaians, in 1966, in your lack of wisdom collectively, you chose to truncate Kwame Nkrumah's presidency. And this guilt you must bear because it's a historical guilt. And when he left, he was in Hanoi, on his way to Hanoi in Vietnam. He was larger than life. The world, the black world, respected him. He was seen as the leader of the black man wherever he was. But he had no shortage of enemies, because men who do good have no shortage of enemies. The only person who of his contemporary leaders saw something good and unique in him was Guinea's Ahmed Sékou Touré. And you will remember with me that when he came back, it was in Conakry in Guinea that he was to settle until he left for Romania. And in his wisdom, Ahmed Sékou Touré made him the co-president. In fact, Ahmed Sékou Touré wanted him to be the president. It is he who said, no, it cannot happen. And he became the co-president. Why is this history necessary? Because at that time, Ghana was able, the leaders of the day were able to demonize Kwame Nkrumah. His legacy was almost obliterated. The statues that had been erected in his honor were brought down. So true that a prophet has no honor in his own home. But in 1972, he was taken upstairs. And when the Ghanaians and Africans started reading some of his works, they were able to realize that a great man had lived in their land. Kwame Nkrumah's memory was restored, and lo and behold, we celebrate a great Ghanaian, a great African.
Just so, today we pause to celebrate a great Nivision, a great soldier of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And similar to the circumstances there in Ghana, we can tell you that the circumstances were exactly the same here in Nevis. It was 1966 when they demonized Nkrumah to get him out of office. Similar in 1992. And that is why we pause on this date when Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel left us and went to be with the ancestors. We pause to celebrate his life and for us to reflect on history, because it is a dangerous thing to allow the people who demonize you and hate you to write history. You have to write your own history. And as such, we from the Nevis Reformation Party will always pause to give you a true reflection on the life and times of Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. You just imagine, in 1991, Dr. Daniel and his team brought the first 5-diamond hotel to this part of the world. We called it Four Seasons then. It is still called Four Seasons now. Brought under the premiership of Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. But the people who opposed him then and are in office now, they spread every conceivable lie that they could spread. Oh, you were supposed to be paid in US dollars. But Sim Daniel and his people insisted that you be paid in EC dollars. Sim Daniel takes 10% of everything. Those are some of the stories that were going around. And I sat in Parliament and heard the second Premier of Nevis, Van Samry, of late and blessed memory, said that when he assumed office in Nevis in 1992, Nevis was a blank page, and that if Columbus returned, he would immediately recognize Nevis. Where Columbus could have stayed at the Four Seasons Hotel, since he would recognize Nevis so easily. He could have stayed at Four Seasons Hotel. He could have enjoyed the electricity that had been brought to Nevis under the NRP led by Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. He would have been able to take up a telephone and use it and call back to Spain and say where he was. And he might even have been able to tell them, and you know, Nevis is such a lovely blank page that they have a Bank of Nevis down here where I'm going to put some money. So the life and times of Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel are outstanding. And anybody who tries to rewrite history so that they want to put their own spin on things, the NRP will have to make sure that we correct history. Good afternoon, Mr. Parry. Good to have you.
Good afternoon, Carlisle. Am I too early?
No, you are right on time. Where I just did the opening to the program. And I reminded people that we are pausing to reflect that 14 years ago, the first Premier of Nevis, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, left us You were around, Mr. Parry. A lot of people don't know that you were charged with setting up the civil service in Nevis. But I'm not going to tell you where to start. You just tell us about the life and times and your memories of our national hero, His Excellency, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel.
Okay, sir. Well, the very first time that I came in contact with NRP is through Eustace Nesbitt, who we call Jesse. In 1970, there was a meeting at the Black and White Hall in the Low Street area, and he invited me to the meeting. I was a university student at the time. So I went to the meeting, and it was very interesting. It was chaotic, a lot of confusion. And I told Chetty, look, I'm not going to come back to any meeting like this. And so I went off to Barbados, and I thought that was that. But I returned home in 1972 and got married in 1973 and lived in Stony Grove in the area where the water services have their weekly fry-up. And Jesse used to come by me every Sunday. He left home, went by Ivor Stevens, and then he came down by me. And he came down there to talk politics. And after he had talked and left, articles appeared in the Democrat, and people thought I wrote them, and I never did. I did not even know that he was writing these articles. And so that's how I got trapped into the political arena, and how I got introduced. Second introduction to the Nevis Reformation Party. It was a tough time for them, because I started the local council. They controlled the local council around 1971. I think Mr. Daniel was not elected in 71, but in 75. And they used to have to deal with roads and water and sanitation. And they were not given much money to do the projects in Nevis. And like the money was released in December, early December, and they were told they had to use up all that money, otherwise all that money will go back to the treasury. So if you walk around Nevis, you still see some strip roads. Those were roads that they had to put down. People like Brother Philip used to split this, and others will rush out and put down strip roads and try to spend the money, the local council money. And they existed like this until 1980, when there was a general election. And in that election, NIP won 2 seats in Nevis, and PAM won a number of seats in St. Kitts, and they were able to form a coalition government. And then is when they were able to do substantial work in Nevis. I don't think you remember, but by December of that year, they had the airport lighted.
Mm-hmm.
The airport, planes could not land at the Montgomery Airport. We used to call it the Newcastle Airport before then. In fact, when you had the sinking of the Christina in 1970, cars had to line up over there so that a plane could land with Dr. Simmons, who came over to assist with the problem that we had at the hospital and on the island of Nevis. So it was lighted late December, and then between election time and late December, we were able to get a 720 Morley's engine, so they could begin to expand electricity outside Charlestown. The people of Jessup will tell you that they did not get electricity until 1980 because the department wired from Charlestown past Jessup to Cotton Ground, and Cotton Ground was given electricity, but Jessup had none. Sticky Liebert, Mr. Frederick Liebert, and Mr. Roach, who were very much involved in dealing with electricity in Nevis, have told stories about the plant and how it operated. Mr. Daniel was the Minister of Nevis Affairs at that time. I was the permanent secretary, and Mr. Swanson was head of the Nevis Local Council. Mr. Arthur Evelyn worked very closely with him, and Mr. Newton was the secretary of the council. And a lot of work was done on water and on road construction with Nevis Affairs, led by Mr. Daniel, working closely with Mr. Swanson and Mr. Evelyn, and of course myself and Newton as the civil servant. We were able to develop electricity, roads, and water, and to try to build a civil service between 1980 and 1983. And I use the date 1983 because that is the time of independence. I remember when this first started, you had Adrian Walwyn as the senior officer, and nobody else above executive officer on the island of Nevis. We were able to employ Mrs. Marjorie Morton as an assistant secretary, Mr. L. Malida as an assistant secretary, Mr. Walwyn as an assistant secretary, and the three of them worked with me as we tried to develop the civil service. We were able to put in place ministries so that come election time and election, you had several ministries on the island. You had the Ministry of Agriculture and Tourism, you had the ministry led by Mr. Evelyn, you had the Communication and Works led by Ivor Stevens, and you had the Premier's Ministry led by Mr. Daniel. And then is when the real work in the development of Nevis started. I don't know if you want to make a comment at this time, Carla. It's always better for comments to be made in between.
No, you're going absolutely perfectly, because we want people to understand that the ministries that you have now did not exist before 1983, when Nevis had the return of self-government for the first time in over 100 years. And that even though there were tremendous accomplishments, they happened quickly because the party and Dr. Daniel and his team were ready. They were organized and they knew what they were doing.
Absolutely. There are two things that I recall that I think I need to bring to the attention of the listeners. Between 1980 and 1983, for the first time, every division school child had access to secondary education. You know, in the old days, before those days, the people from the St. James area especially found that only the outstanding students got into secondary school. The others had to do CP, College of Preceptors, at the elementary school. But under Mr. Daniel, the Ministry of Nevis Affairs, every child on Nevis had access to secondary education. In fact, Nevis was the first island in the OECS that had that type of program, and every child had access to secondary education. The second thing was the Nevis Sixth Form, which you would know much about because you were one of the first students of the Nevis Sixth Form. I remind people over and over again that I went to the grammar school in St. Kitts in 1965, and at that time, only 3 of us from Nevis went to the grammar school, Sixth Form. Myself, my wife Rosalind Warner at that time, who became Rosalind Parry, and Van Samry, who became the second Premier of Nevis. 3 of us went to Sixth Form. And one of the first things that Mr. Daniel and Mr. Stevens did was to establish a Nevis Sixth Form. I think there were about 20 of you. I don't remember the exact figure, but I think there were about 20 of you. and your house up near to government house in a white cottage. I think that is where you started.
That is true.
And
That eventually became the home for housing and land development.
absolutely. And then, with the help of the British government, the sixth form college was established on the Charlestown Secondary School ground. And I must make the point that Mr. Daniel and Mr. Stevens had no intention of making the sixth form college part of the Charlestown Secondary School. The sixth form college was supposed to be there for all students from both high schools to attend. And it was supposed to be an independent body, an independent educational institution. The real reason why it was placed there was to have teachers, especially those who had degrees, to have to teach the subjects that were available at the sixth form at that time. Some people established in their minds that it was an extension of the Charlestown Secondary School. That was never the intention. So, back to the development of means. The NRP focused on water development, electricity development, and road development, as well as the telephone system. Water development started with reservoirs, building of reservoirs in different areas of Venus, and trying to establish wells. Before 1980, you hardly had pipe water on Venus. Charlestown used to have water maybe between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock every morning, and then the pipes became empty until maybe for a few hours in the evening. Other places around the island might have had the extension for pipe water, but had no water in the pipe. That situation changed rapidly between 1983 and 1992. The establishment of electricity, the Prospect electricity plant, was established between that period with two Marley's generators. I think they were 920s, and the whole of Nevis was able to get electricity during that period. The road system. I remember that Mr. Daniel wanted to have a Laurel Ring Road. I don't know if you are familiar with the expression the Laurel Ring Road.
I am.
Okay, but that is the road that led past Bath, along the seaside, and linked Bath with Gingerland. That road leads to Long Point, Coxheath, right to Indian Castle, and at the bottom of that road that goes to Market Shop down to the sea. And I was sent to Barbados to try to access funds for that road. The British government, the British Development Division said, no, we are going to put the money in water. And that money was used to develop a reservoir at New River, sorry, not New River, at Rollins Village, and also to establish one or two wells. And because of that, divisions were able to get water. Most divisions were able to get water nearly 24 hours a day. So you had the road system, you had water, you had electricity, and then with the telephone system, they moved over from government to cable and wireless. So the foundation for development was laid between 1983 and 1992. Now, divisions generally speaking, were either unemployed or not employed at all. You had a few inns. Tourism was the way that slaves do this, and the construction of homes. Canadians came to Nevis, Americans came to Nevis and established homes in Shaw's Road, in the Westbury area, in the Cliff Dwellers area, over in Gingerland, in the Golden Rock area. And you had the Nisbet Plantation Inn, which was the most outstanding hotel on the island and did much for the people of St. James. You had Montpelier, which was established by the Gaskell family, and they had the Golden Rock hotel. I think the lady who ran it is still around. I saw her a few weeks ago. And I understand that she's directly related to the Maynard family, owned that estate and other estates in the area many years ago. And then you had the Old Manor Plantation Inn. And those hotels employed people as needed. Well, when Mr. Daniel got in, he working along with people like Ricky Scarrett, and I was the point man there, had it to be renovated and made even lifted to a better standard on the island of Nevis. And then you had Mount Nevis Hotel, established by Mr. McGee, Abdul McGee. And there's an interesting story there, because Abdul McGee was persuaded by Mr. Mellenville, who was the brother-in-law of Mr. Daniel, to come to Nevis. And working with Mr. Daniel, they were able to establish that hotel, which is still in existence today. And because of the state of the airport, Dr. McGee felt that it was important to have easy transit of guests. And so he had a boat. And he was persuaded that he should use the boat to transport divisions from Thinking to Navy as well, because it was a good boat, good quality of high standard. And the then CPM government, the CPM party, which was in its early stages, went around Nevis and convinced divisions that the hotel belonged to Mr. Daniel, and that they should not go on the boat because the boat was Mr. Daniel's boat, when nothing was farther from the truth. And that was the first bit of damage, serious damage, that was done to the Nevis Reformation Party, all based on a silly lie that was spread around the island. The second thing that happened during that period was the establishment of the Four Seasons Hotel. Now, the Four Seasons Hotel was a five-star hotel that was the envy of the whole of the Caribbean. It is said that when the people came here first, other persons tried to get them to establish an island other than Nevis. That did not happen. They chose Four Seasons. There was a company out of the United States, Howard and Howard, who was sent to scout the area, and Howard and Howard liked Nevis. And so this hotel, done by a French company, established the Four Seasons Hotel. And that revolutionized the whole of Nevis. Women who had never worked, because in those days, women hardly had jobs in Nevis. Only a few of them were able to work at the hotels, and only a few of them were able to work in the civil service. Women who never worked in their life were able to go to the Four Seasons and work. Some 700 persons, some 700 divisions were able to get work in a matter of a few years. And Nevis had full employment. Then is when people started to come to Nevis. But you know, Carlisle, it is so sad because the advent of the fourth season should have cemented the English Reformation Party in government. But a number of things was done, like first, Mr. Daniel and the English Reformation Party. First of all, when the construction of the part of the hotel started, you had lumber that was being thrown away. At first, they allowed divisions to take the used lumber. And it seems that people started to take lumber to which they had no legal access to. And so, instead of giving the lumber to the people, they took the lumber to the dump. And whether they burned them or whatever, I am not sure. But then a rumor started that Mr. Daniel told the people at the hotel site not to give Division any lumber. And Division believed, unfortunately. That was the first look to the English Reformation Party and Mr. Daniel. The second thing was the wages. Now, I was the Minister of Labour at that time, and Mr. John Stout, who was the manager of the hotel, and I spoke on many times. I mean, Daniel was very much involved in the negotiation. And Mr. John Stout pulled apart one another. When we were negotiating, he met directly to the workers, got them to agree to a certain wage level. And when we went with him again, he said, but the workers had already agreed and the budget for the hotel had already been established in Canada. The rumor started that Mr. Daniel said that he don't want the workers to work for more than the civil servants, and the people believe. And the second thing was that the hotel wanted to pay them in US, but Mr. Daniel insisted that they be paid in it, and the people believe. And so, when we had the election in 1992, it was hell to pay the fee because the people had turned against Mr. Daniel and the Needed Reformation Party. I think that it's the only island, the only place where you had such a rapid development in such a short time by a political party that lost because of it. In St. Kitts, Mr. Bradshaw led the Trade and Labor Union, and the people said that Mr. Bradshaw was able to get them to wear shoes with the hat not. He defended them against the plaster cloth, and the people supported Mr. Bradshaw until he died in the 1970s. The people remained loyal to Mr. Bradshaw, and they continue to remain loyal to the Labour Party in part up to today. The Labour Party is the biggest party in St. Kitts and Nevis. And part of it and most of it had to do with the fact that Mr. Bradshaw was the original leader and he did what he did. That did not happen on Nevis. Quite the opposite happened. It is sad that I am the one left to say it, but it has to be said because the people of Nevis need to understand what they did at that time, why they did it, and how they did it. And the people of Nevis need to understand that they cannot continue to be led and misled by wild schemes and wild promises. They need to look at the performance. They need to look at people who have served them in and out of government. then need to look at the footprint that people leave behind. Because that's how you judge them. You can't say that this man has come to you and you know nothing about it. If the man lived in Nevis, if the man went to school in Nevis, how did he behave as a school child? How did he behave as a teacher, as a worker? Was he involved in social activities? Did he help in his community? Did he do anything for anybody? Was he a good fellow or a good woman? Did they have a good reputation? Like, the footprints are there. The footprints are there. And when people try to say that they don't know, they are lying to themselves. They're fooling themselves and they're making excuses. I don't really want to make a big comparison, but I will make it. Everybody knew Donald Trump. Everybody knew Donald Trump was. He told them what he would do, and they voted for him. And now, the very people who voted for him, who were closest to him, are now crying out and saying they did not know, but they knew. And we, as a people, whether white, black, or blue, brown, or whatever color, we need to stop fooling ourselves and doing things that we know will hurt us in the long run. I'm deliberately said that because people must learn from their mistakes. And the people of Nevis have made many mistakes. Mr. Daniel, even before he got into government, helped many people. I've been told this because I worked in Social Security from 1978 to 1980. And when I visited homes, especially in the Gingerland area, and I mentioned Gingerland because Gingerland was the first to leave the army. Many people down Congress Road have said to me the things that Mr. Daniel did for them. Buying books for the children to go to school. Giving them a week the sum of money they would go to Mrs. House in Mr. Daniel's office so they could get food, to put food on their table. Mr. Swanson as well. The different times that they took stuff from Mr. Swanson and never paid. And when you hear these stories, you grieve, you're saddened that these men made these sacrifices and yet they found themselves rejected by the very people. But you mentioned Nkrumah just now, and so it is not in Venus alone. But there is something that I must say, Carl, between 1970 and 1980, we had an army in Venus. I don't know if you remember the army.
But of course, I'm from Zion. They used to camp in Mr. Newton's land halfway up Zion Hill, close to Mr. Swanston.
Okay, well, they had a truck or a jeep that they used to drive in. And I understand that at night sometimes they would go on this Swanston home on his veranda and knock on his door and frighten his children. And you know, he had many children. It must have been very traumatic for those children. Mr. Swanston was a tough person, a tough character. And that did not cause him to show fear. In fact, it made him stronger. Mr. Daniel, who lived in the area of Brazier's there, on the hill, you know, the house on the hill,
Mm-hmm.
he used to have to leave there and come to Barnes to sleep at his father's home at night because they used to try to terrorize him. And, you know, it was the only house in that area at that time. And nobody knew exactly what would happen to him. You'd have heard of the story of the effort made to clean his office, to take out all the furniture in his office, to take out all the implements, the typewriters and whatever else were in there. And that Mr. Swanson and Ron Lyon had to go and claim that the typewriters belong to them. And that is how they were able to steal after these typewriters from his office. That is a lot of pain, a lot of pain that these men had to endure, that the people of Nevis know nothing about and they don't talk about. I remember I heard, and I never experienced this because I was not an NRP at the time. I was a student. That they used to try to go to England sometimes to meet with the Home Office to try to plead for needs to remain a colony of Britain. And I'm told that sometimes some of the men would go to Antigua and come out there for a few days and come back home and pretend that they went to England because of the kind of pressure that they faced in England. The Home Office sometimes refused to see them. The colonial office refused to see them. And so sometimes they just went to Antigua, cool out, and came back home and pretended they went to England. And there's that story told about the bag of money. You know, it is amazing how we as division can be easily misled. That they gave Mr. Daniel and NRP bag of money to go to England. Now, where the people leave it got bag of money from Carlisle. In those days, you had fishermen, you had people working the land, you had people running the cattle and the sheep and the goats and the pigs. But there was not a lot of money. There was no regular income as such. We had the $1 bill. We had the $2 bill. I hope you remember the $2 bill.
No, I don't remember the $2. I remember the 1, the 5, the 20, and the 100.
And the 10.
No, the 10 came in late. I don't remember the 10 from earlier o'clock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, those are what we had, really and truly. I never saw a $100 bill in those days. I don't know a $100 bill looked in those days. I worked for $149, and that was in 1967. I was paid $149 a month. Where would I get a $100 bill from? Where would I go to a supermarket and be able to visit a $100 bill? You know, and so you can imagine earlier when Mr. Bellamy started to work, he was making 12 shillings a month. 12 shillings a month, that would come to about $3 or so. So you see, when the people talk about bags of money, my understanding is that they would go on and collect some money, yes, to make the people feel that they were participating, and that was good policy, that was good strategy. But Mr. Evelyn, Mr. Sonny Paris, those were the backbone of the party in terms of money so that they could go to England. Mr. Evelyn and Sonny Paris, those were the ones who put their hands in their pocket to ensure that these guys went to England. So that was another fallacious story about bags of money, and people bought that story knowing fully well they had no money. So I have deliberately expressed that because the civilians need to know that the wrong things that were done to the gentleman, Mr. Daniel, and done to the NRP general. And the men like Mr. Daniel, Mr. Ron Liebert, Harris Liebert, Sonny Paris, Arthur Evelyn, and Brother Philip, Mr. Stinsett, there are other two events in the joint system. I'm not going to call their names. They can call their own name. But these men should be elevated, should be celebrated on the island of Nevis for being the foundation fathers of the island of Nevis, who ought to ensure that we had a government again after 1980, after 100 years, that we were able to have a government on the island of Nevis. And that today we have an island with an island government that has to develop the country. If I may just say this, that we need to be proud that you have a parliament and Nevis again. You have a premier, you have a cabinet, you have ministers, and you have civil servants. It is our duty, now that we have a government in place, to elect the right people. And those people must lead. They must lead the country. They must not only lead the country, but they must help to develop people. They must be leaders, and they must be fathers and mothers, and they must reach out to people and try to show them the right way to live. They must be able to come up with projects that are linked, are synchronized to the development of the country. And we must cease this habit of chasing after foreign exotic offers. Foreigners come here to make money for themselves, not to elevate you. If you have that established in your mind that they come here to make a profit, you then need to establish in your own mind how you're going to benefit from their presence. But don't expect them to help you to benefit. Don't expect them to help you to be rich. And when you are offered exotic projects that make no sense short term or long term, stay away from them. Stay away from them. You know how many projects that were offered to us that were tempting, but we took our time. Mr. Daniel took his time and didn't make any decision and waited and asked me and asked Bobby and asked all kinds of persons what they think. And in the end, we realized we need to walk away. That is how you do it. You seek advice. You ask people how they feel. You don't jump out of front and make a fool of yourself and the people of Venus. And so, Carlisle, I hope that we can learn from people like Mr. Daniel, the sacrifices they made, the great acts that they did personally and officially, and how they have to steer this country in a direction of development.
Mr. Barry, I just want to ask you about the land reform program, because Dr. Daniel understood that land gave people a starting point. It allowed them something that they could leverage in terms of improving the homes, in terms of being able to send their children away for further education. And so in the mid-1980s, pretty early in the life of his government, he came up with this innovative land reform program where land was being sold in Nevis for $6,000 an acre.
Well, and when I finish that, remind me about the financial situation, the Bank of Nevis, etc., etc.
I will.
Now, the land reform program started very early. By 1984, it was in full swing. It might have started before, but certainly in 1984. Mr. Evelyn was then the Minister of Land. And Mr. Daniel made a decision that land should be made available to the people all around Nevis. And that people who had worked the land should be given a preferential rate, a rate where they can purchase for themselves and for their children. And so you had estates like Potworks and Mississippi and Magnus, and you had Hamilton Estate, you had Prospect Estate. In the Gingerland area, you had Hard Times, and where Huggins lived there, what they call that estate, the merchant place.
Fothergills, going down to Vovins.
Yeah, Fothergills.
And New River.
And yeah, there was not much was done with New River though. And all those estates had lands, and they ensured that lands were sold for next to nothing. I don't know if you remember the exact price. $6,000 an acre come to mind.
That's what it was, and $3,000 for half an acre.
Right.
And the opposition told people that was too much, that they would sell it for cheaper, and they got into office and promptly raised it to $33,000 an acre.
But you're absolutely right. And the irony of it all is that didn't cause it in return. They took the blows. I would say that maybe we, as divisions like blows, they took the blows. I remember going to Rollins Village with Mr. Daniel and Mr. Evelyn to talk to the people up there about making land available, because they started to argue and they started to fight over the lands, because the idea was that if somebody had 3 acres of land and some of them did. That I think it was 1 acre for the parents, and maybe half an acre or whatever for the children. And whatever was left over should be shared among other villagers. And they didn't want to. They didn't want to share. You would think that people would remember that and tell themselves that this man or these men did a good thing. And that they could buy the land for 6,000 and if they couldn't afford 6,000, they will find 3,000 acres by half an acre. And they made enemies of the NRB because of it. It is really mind-boggling. And I remember Rollins especially because it was worse in Rollins than any place else. But when you look around at the development, and I prefer to deal with the positives. When you look at the developments around the island, Hamilton, at the Prospect, at Bovin, at Madden, Port Works, Elizabeth, all those areas were developed by the Needed Separation Party. Ironically, the only place that they didn't have land to develop was in the St. Thomas area. And so the people of St. Thomas found themselves encumbered and surrounded and almost in prison because the land were owned by private people. And while they were the stalwarts of the Needed Separation Party, they did not have the opportunity that other people in other parts of the East had. But again, the land reform program was one of the first in the OECD. And people didn't have to live on the edge of the road. You could travel around things today. You still find many of the villages on the roadside. Indeed, we were able to drive off the main road and drive into the villages because it's what the Needed Party, the Needed Reformation Party under Mr. Daniel ensured that it happened. We have to give some credit to Mr. Retchell because he was one of the first to make sure that these old estates were owned by the government. And because they were owned by the government, we were able to make sure that people got their lands and people were able to have their property. There was a famous phrase made on a boat. Then Mr. Daniel said, Divisions, make sure that you own a piece of this rock. And therefore, he must be able to take it and use it against him. Up to now, I don't know how. But he was used against them. Maybe that they told the people that they should take the land, that they should get the land free. And that's what they did. But I have, as you said, the price increased immediately. I remember before the Charleston Primary School was built, there was no land available in that area. And we had to fight to get land. I am not going to call any names, but there was a particular landowner who didn't want to sell and ask for all kind of prices for the land. Eventually, he handsomely compensated, I understand. But that land was made available from Charleston Primary School for the exist. And the Charleston were able to have the primary school. They had land next to the primary school, and they have been able to dominate sports at the primary level for many, many years. And they really need to thank Simeon Daniel for fighting to make sure that school is established right there in the Queddock Road, Ramsbury area. The Housing Corporation came out of the land development program. It is an interesting story there, Starlight, that when they were negotiating, that between 2017, when the government of Princeton was negotiating for the Constitution, they said that land must not be a common factor that they wanted to hold on to their land. because they had more land than we had anyway. And so they were able to have their corporation and whatever other corporations they had. And so Mr. Adams said, our lands cannot be, when we hold lands, the money cannot go to the revenue there. We were supposed to hold on to its land. And so the Nevis Housing and Land Corporation was formed. And that did a tremendous job between 1984 and 1992. I really think that Hastings Daniel, who has left us, never got his shoe. He never got the credit that he deserved for the hard work he did. He ran an honest ship. And nobody was able to point a finger at Hastings Daniel until he did everything wrong. The corporation was transparent. People were able to buy land. People were able to develop their land and build homes, especially when money came into the pockets with the Four Seasons, because of Mr. Daniel and the International Party. That is the kind of work that was done. Now, you did say that by having land, they were able to mortgage the land that's supposed to build a home or to send their children abroad to get further education. But land is value. Land gives you a foundation. Land makes you, I would say, give you a sense of importance, a sense of ownership. And this happened because of the Nevis International Party and Mr. Daniel.
Absolutely.
And it is something that we should be proud of and something that we must not forget.
Absolutely.
Now to the development of the financial sector. And I use the word financial rather than money because it has different forms of shape. The first thing was the offshore financial services. And that happened again because of Mr. Daniel. I understand at the Christmas party, Cecil Byron had a friend, John Tansey, and another gentleman whose name I don't remember. And they came up with the idea of a financial service division. It happened in Panama, and it happened in an African country, but I don't recall at the moment. And they felt that it could be done in years. And Cecil Byron got Mr. Daniel involved. And I remember we traveled to Washington, Mr. Daniel, myself and Bobby Liebert, and met with John Tansey and the other gentlemen. And we were able to sit down and work out a deal. And that deal led to the establishment of the financial services sector, the offshore financial services sector. And I remember there was some opposition from the federal cabinet. And Billy Herbert was very supportive. I think he was the one who was very supportive of Mr. Daniel and said, leave the man alone. Let him move forward with this thing. This is a good thing. It continues to be one of the most important areas of where we the beer on the island. And the company that was brought here, I think, is the major company still on the island of Peters. Now, NRP was criticized because we asked the company to regulate the industry for us, to ensure that due diligence was done, etc., so that we wouldn't have bad people who were involved on the wrong side of the legal fence involved in it. And we were criticized for giving that monopoly for 5 years. And Caroline, it was a good thing. We accepted our limitations, and that's something that people need to know. They need to know the limitations. They need to know when they don't have the resources to do something. Because we never had any problem at all in terms of that industry because of that wise decision for him, Daniel. So in spite of the criticism, he did the right thing. If you look at the industry nowadays, They have all kinds of problems. I understand that there's a good lady who's a lawyer who used to work there and was very trained and experienced, has left because she said she doesn't want to go to jail, you know. I am just saying that for what it's worth, but I'm going to further with that. All I'm saying is that sometimes you might be very educated and you might have traveled all over the world and you think you know more than everybody else, but you make mistakes and you do wrong things and you don't follow what others have done. You don't follow the footsteps of others. You must know your limitations. You must know what you can control and what you can't control. You can't afford to dive in and then when you dive in, you can't swim. Before you dive in, you must know that you can swim and you can dive and you can come back out. And so, we had the financial services. But he went further than that. He formed the Bank of Nevis. He gathered a few people on the island of Nevis. He traveled to England. He traveled to the United States of America. He traveled to Canada to get people to invest in the bank. And was able to establish the Bank of Nevis. And it is one of the important institutions on the island of Nevis today. I would like to say that the intention was for the bank to be the bank of the people, the Bank of Nevis. It was not the intention for it to be the bank of the government of Nevis. And I am hopeful that the day will soon come when the government can remove itself from the bank and allow the bank to service the people of Nevis. Because, you see, Carlisle, if the government takes all the money out and there's no money left for investment, there's no money left for loans, there's no money left for development by the private sector. You follow what I'm saying?
I am.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it is, and this applies to all governments. All governments would like to be in institutions. Government is there. Government is there to help. Government is there to lead. Government is there to not show, not to take over. Because government don't run anything properly. Governments always get into trouble. And we don't seem to understand that. But Mr. Daniel established the Bank of Nevis. And even further, he encouraged the Bank of Nova Scotia to come here. And he supported the credit union, he supported all credit corporations. But the Nevis Credit Union, he was very much involved in the celebration of, in the support of that organization. And so, you see, he created a financial sector on the island of Nevis that is still in existence today, and which we need to continue to develop as a resource and as part of the industrial, of the sectoral activity for the development of I thought it was important that I said that because it was very, very strategic that he did it and very helpful to all of us here at the island.
Mr. Parry, I want to thank you very much for spending quality time with us this afternoon and helping to reflect on the life and times and the major contributions of national hero Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. Thank you very much, Mr. Parry.
It was my pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Joseph Parry, Premier of Nevis, following in the footsteps of His Excellency Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, Vance Amory, and himself, Joseph Parry, being the third Premier of Nevis. We'll take a little break, but we will open the phone lines when we get back. 669-7312. That is 669-7312. 469-7953 or 917-460-2187. Planning to be here until about 4 o'clock. The phone lines will be open when we get back, so you can call in and go on the record.
Beautiful
Ghanaians in 1966 in your lack of wisdom collectively. You chose to truncate Kwame Nkrumah's presidency. And this guilt you must bear because it's a historical guilt. And when he left, he was in Hanoi, on his way to Hanoi in Vietnam. He was larger than life. The world, the black world, respected him. He was seen as the leader of the black man wherever he was. But he had no shortage of enemies. Because men who do good have no shortage of enemies. The only person who, of his contemporary leaders, saw something good and unique in him was Guinea's Ahmed Sékou Touré. And you will remember with me that when he came back, it was in Conakry in Guinea that he was to settle until he left for Romania. And in his wisdom, Ahmed Sékou Touré made him the co-president. In fact, Ahmed Sékou Touré wanted him to be the president. It is he who said, no, it cannot happen. And he became the co-president. Why is this history necessary? Because at that time, Ghana was able, the leaders of the day were able to demonize Kwame Nkrumah. His legacy was almost obliterated. The statues that had been erected in his honor were brought down. So true that a prophet has no honor in his own home. But in 1972, he was taken upstairs. And when when the Ghanaians and Africans started reading some of his works, they were able to realize that a great man had lived in their land. Kwame Nkrumah's memory was restored, and lo and behold, we celebrate a great Ghanaian, a great African.
That is so similar to what happened here in Nevis. In 1992, Nevisians, in their lack of wisdom, voted against Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, who had been such an influential and important figure here in the lives of Nevisians, who had started to transform Nevis. Suppose you were able to go back and to just say, listen, do another term. Let's see what will happen in another 5 years. Because from 1983 until 1992, when the CCM misled people and misguided people and got them to vote against themselves and their own development, Nevis had taken off at a breakneck pace. It was the government of His Excellency, our national hero, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, who afforded Nevisians to stay at home and earn their degrees. You remember he brought in 2 institutions from Florida so that he was preparing public servants here in Nevis to be able to get their degrees. Dr. Daniel and his team decided, listen, we want every single one of our principals at our schools here in Nevis to be degreed. We want our civil servants to be degreed. And so those persons were afforded the opportunity to stay at home and to study and to earn their degrees. But there is a good way to hear on the record some of the stuff that Dr. Daniel did. Let's go to an interview that I did with our national hero back in 1992.
We look at the development of Nevis, first of all, for the period 1980 to 1992, when Dr. Simeon Daniel was the premier. Then we look at it from 1992 to 2006. I'm delighted that we'll be able to speak with our elder statesman, the first premier of Nevis, Dr. Simeon Daniel. I dare say that very few people know and understand the political struggles of Nevisians as well as he does. Nobody has ever questioned his commitment to serve Nevis or St. Kitts Nevis. Therefore, I'm delighted to have him with me, and he's on the phone this afternoon. We are happy now to link up with him and to say hello and good afternoon to Dr. Daniel. Good afternoon, Dr. Daniel.
Hello, good afternoon.
First thing, we want to take you back a bit and set the stage. How did you become involved in politics and when?
I got involved in politics in 1970. That was the year the Christina disaster occurred.
Yes.
And that was 3 years after the people of Anguilla revolted. There were two lawyers on Nevis at the time, Mr. Cecil Byron and myself. And Mr. Ivor Stevens, the late Ivor Stevens, Ewell Swanston, and Ron Liebert, Horace Liebert, Carlton Paris, they were at the forefront of politics. But they were not organized as such. But they were there making their voice heard in the community and saying, well, if Anguilla break away, Nevis must break away too. And that's what we were going toward. And they came to me often to help them to form a party. I had just come back from law school. I just set up my practice, and I decided I was not getting involved in politics. However, the Wooding Commission came to Nevis to hear what Nevis wanted if Anguilla was to get their secession from St. Kitts, because that is after Anguilla invaded St. Kitts and drove out the police from St. Kitts, from Anguilla, drove out the civil servant, and the British government had moved back into Anguilla. And the Wooding Commission wanted to know what would Nevis want if the statehood was to be broken up. And those fellows came to me and they said, look, Mr. Daniel, you are the only lawyer we have on the island who might be able to help us because Mr. Byron is not interested in politics. He wants to be kept up. So I said, well, if I can help, I will try and help. But I said, if we have to do anything, we have to get the UNM, which was the Eugene Walwyn's party, which was Ron Liebert, Horace Liebert, Sonny Paris, and, you know, those people, Brother Philip. I said, we'll have to get the two sides together. It was Ivor Stevens and Ewell Swanston on the other side. And so we decided to sit down and see how we can get the two political parties together to fight for Nevis. And it wasn't easy. We had over a week meeting every night in different places to get the two sides to agree to work together to benefit Nevis. And that is where I got involved. I was involved and I was asked to lead the NRP. And that's where I got involved. I held that position for 22 years.
For the average Nevisian, who 1970 is a long way away for the youngsters, can you just indicate to them what life was like back then in terms of the utilities, electricity, water, the roads, and what NRP had to fight for and establish in the early days?
I think the best way to go about that is to let me repeat my official exit speech from active politics.
Sure, go right ahead.
In June. Greetings, fellow Nevisians. This is the voice of the Nevis Reformation Party, through me, who has the honor and privilege of addressing you through the kind courtesy of One Radio. There are so many false rumors in circulation that it is virtually important for us as a party recently out of government to set the record straight. As you are aware, elections to the Nevis Island Assembly took place on Monday, June 1st, and our party and government lost 3 seats to 2. This is what democracy is all about. And of course, we abide by the results. The people have opted for a change of government, and that is their right in a democratic society. Superimposed on this election defeat was the sudden and tragic passing of the late Deputy Governor General Mr. Weston Paris, MBE, and we join with all the people of the Federation in mourning the loss of one who was uniquely blessed, a son of the soil with unusual and multifaceted talents. He lives in our hearts. Now that the noise and tumult have died down somewhat, it is time for us as a party and as a people to get our thoughts together and consider seriously the past, the present, and the future. Where do we go from here? For life must go on, and together we must achieve our stated triple goals of peace, progress, and prosperity. We tender sincere thanks to those who have supported us in the past and who voted for our candidates at the recent election. Because of this, we poured more votes than the opposition. We congratulate the concerned citizens movement on their victory at the polls, and in particular, their 3 successful candidates. Although we are no longer in government, we shall still keep a close watch on the way in which the country is being run. It is our duty, even though now in opposition, not merely for the sake of opposition, but with the welfare of all our people in mind. It is important to remind listeners that although our party has been in existence for almost 22 years, we have only been in government for 12 years, from the 12th of January 1980. It was only 9 years ago that we achieved actual self-government for Nevis. That is in 1983. And we were in a position to make and carry out plans for our beloved homeland, Nevis. Our record speaks for itself. It is a record of which we can be proud. Some of our record achievements over the years are as follows. In telephone, there are now over 2,000 lines. In cable TV, there are some 1,500 connections all around the island. Up to 1980, it was an offense to have a television in your home. And we brought the first cable TV company here in Nevis. In tourism, the number of rooms have doubled, and some 600 new jobs have been created. The Housing and Land Development Corporation has developed lands at Hard Times, Fothergills, Prospect, Potworks, and some 600 Nevision families have already purchased their lots. In agriculture, New River, Cades Bay, and Nisbet's estate have been developed, and we are now able to supply most of the hotels with their produce. I'm talking about 1992. In recreational facilities, cricket fields have been improved at Charlestown and Cotton Ground. Also, new ones were built in Brownhill, Jessops, and Fountain. Basketball and netball courts have been constructed in Cotton Ground, Brownhill, Old Manor, Bricklin, Bath Village, and Barnsgate. And lands have already been acquired at Hickman's, Hanley's Road, and Jessops for the construction of new courts. In education, there is free education for all. A new multi-purpose training center has been recently opened. A sixth form college has been provided. All the primary schools, with the exception of Combermere, are government-owned and equipped with modern facilities. There are preschool training centers all over the island. Some are owned by government and some privately owned. However, All are supervised by the Ministry of Education. Adult education programs have been started all over the island. 6, the level of teacher training has been unprecedented in the history of Nevis. In October 17, that is last year, 17 students graduated with AA degrees from Miami-Dade Community College at a cost of $250,000 to government. And this was to provide qualified workers at the Four Seasons Hotel. Last month, 21 teachers graduated with Bachelor of Science degrees in education from the University of Miami at a cost of $600,000 to government. These persons are being paid at the appropriate scale with no demand to pay back government any money. There are some 21 divisions abroad in universities and other educational institutions studying various subjects. During the period under review, over 20 students have completed their courses of study and are back here at work. Much noise is being made over small grants made to certain needy people, victims of hurricane who were overlooked, but whose names were verified by the Community Affairs Development to assist in getting them sheltered from rain and keeping the cold winds out of their humble homes. We get praise for helping the educated and those who are not too badly off, but we get blamed for helping the poor and the needy. In the field of infrastructural development, our record is unbelievably impressive. In 1981, a 720 kilowatt generator was bought. Between 1983 to 1987, 2 920 kilowatt generators were bought. In 1988, a 2 megawatt generator was purchased for $3 million. In 1992, another 2 megawatt generator was purchased. Both of these 2 megawatt generators have been acquired on a higher purchase basis. Funds to the tune of $1 million have already been secured for the expansion of upgrading of the outside plant and electricity lines. Our water development program has the staggering record of providing the following villages with a 24-hour supply: Brownhill, Bath Village, Hanley's Road, Bricklin, Butlers, Newcastle, Barnaby, Cotton Ground, Jessops, Barnesgut, Fountain, and Westbury. New water mains have been provided in Charlestown. New reservoirs were built at Rollins, Hamilton, Brown Pasture, Mount Lily, Fothergills, and Jessops. In 1992, work has already started on providing water to the remaining villages of Cox, Beaumont, and Pond Hill. When these are completed, every village in Nevis will have a 24-hour-a-day water supply. In roads, funds have been already negotiated for the revamping of the Nevis Island Main Road from the Caribbean Development Bank. Other roads have been repaired and constructed all over the island, too numerous to mention. I'll repeat that paragraph. In roads, funds have already negotiated for the revamping of the Nevis Island Main Road from the Caribbean Development Bank. Other roads have been repaired and constructed all over the island, too numerous to mention. In seaport development, funds for the study of the seaport were secured by us from the Caribbean Development Bank. Work is already in progress. The airport, I am obliged to emphasize the Newcastle Airport project, and that project has been approved contrary to statements made otherwise. We had lengthy discussions with the European Development Fund representatives. We have discussed 4 options, and chose the first one, which was the expansion of the runway in the direction of Newcastle Village. Let me state that the European Development Fund was prepared to accept no other option and advised us that in no way would they be involved in the demolition of Hurricane Hill. The funds to construct the runway are available, and this is known at federal as well as Nevis level. The danger is if the project is not pursued immediately, the funds would be transferred to another island in the Caribbean. In the private sector, Nevis was established as a financial center by enacting the Nevis Business Corporation Ordinance in 1984. Morningstar Holdings Limited commenced operations, and we are indebted to Morningstar Holdings for their contribution in helping to establish Nevis as a financial center. In 1985, 9 persons along with myself established the Bank of Nevis Limited, an institution which revolutionized banking practices in Nevis. Today, the bank is one of the leading financial institutions in the Federation. The Four Seasons Resort, the only 5-star hotel in the Caribbean, with a Trent Jones Championship golf course, was opened, employing over 600 persons. Nevis, which had one of the largest unemployment rates in the Caribbean, became an importer of labor. All of the small inns of Nevis expanded their operations. The Caribbean Cove and Botanical Gardens were established. The Mount Nevis Hotel and Estates was opened. The Grace University Medical Institution was opened. The Nevis Philatelic Bureau was established, and the Bath Hotel was purchased by the first deposit made by the Nevis Philatelic Bureau. A contract was signed, and a deposit was made towards the purchase of Penny's estate. Let me repeat that. A contract was signed, and a deposit was made towards the purchase of Penny's estate. You will hear how much we had to pay then. Delta Petroleum Limited established a plant in Nevis. I appeal to one and all to let good sense prevail. The election is over, so let us get our airport expanded. We cannot continue to find scapegoats and blame others when we make mistakes. Now is the time to face reality. Now is the time to put aside partisan politics and behave like true citizens of our country. On a personal note, I beg to announce that I have decided to step down as party leader, a post I have held for the past 22 years. The Honorable Joseph Parry has been elected to serve as interim party leader until there is a formal election at our party convention. I feel certain that all our party supporters and well-wishers will rally around our new party leader, congratulate him, and respect his considerable personality and political ability. And above all, continue to support our party. My party, the Nevis Reformation Party, which has literally brought Nevis out of darkness into glorious light. May God continue to bless us as we put our hands and our lives into his gracious keeping with full assurance that he sees all, he knows all, and provides for all of us, his children. Thank you.
There's more to that interview. That is only the opening part of it. Another 45 minutes is left, but we're not going to do that at this time because we also want to play a couple of other things and we want to hear from you as well. But could you imagine that impressive portfolio? And Van Samry stood up in Parliament down the road from where we are and said that when he became Premier of Nevis in 1992, that Nevis was a blank page. Wow. Wow. A blank page. After all of the announcements that Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel made in that address, after all of the many ways that he showed that Nevis and Nevisians became empowered, I mean, if you didn't remember anything else but the fact that Bath Hotel was bought for the people of Nevis, if you didn't remember anything else but the fact that negotiations had been completed with the owners of Pinny's estate and that a deposit had been made for the purchase of Pinny's estate. And by the way, the purchase price at that time was $8 million. CCM eventually bought the same Pinny's estate, but they paid about $24 million for the estate when Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel had already negotiated, his government had negotiated a purchase price of $8 million. The CCM decided, hey, listen, we're not in the business of real estate, and they paid back the people who had bought treasury bonds. And they said, we don't want Pinny's estate. And later on, they paid an additional $16 million for Pinny's estate. That's nothing strange. It's the same thing that happened with West Haven. It's nothing new. They are accustomed to this fallacious argument that they're not into real estate and they can't accept prices which are negotiated by NRP because they can do better, and then they do far worse. It's unfortunate. So to hear from our second premier that when he assumed office, taking over from Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, who had accomplished so much, that Nevis was a blank page. It's not the first time that CCM would pretend that life in Nevis began with them. That is the way they operate, because only they are smart. You heard Dr. Daniel say in that speech that after the opening of Four Seasons Hotel, Nevis, who had one of the highest unemployment rates in all of these islands, started to import workers. So you're moving from unemployment to a situation where you were saying, listen, please, we're begging workers to come to Nevis. And those were not these kind of ticky-tack numbers where you hear some people nowadays are saying, hey, listen, we check with Social Security and so many jobs. And when you look around, people are underemployed and catching the tail. Even though they work in 2 jobs, they still can't make ends meet. Listen, we're remembering Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, and we have a couple other things to do. And of course, your phone calls are part of the show. If you feel like you have something to say, call us. Thank you, King Miko. And we're going to take a pause because I like hearing from the national hero, His Excellency Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. So I'll take you to one of his finest moments, the grand opening of the Four Seasons Hotel in 1991.
Sir Clement and Lady Arundel, Right Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Kennedy Simmons and Mrs. Simmons, Deputy Governor General Honorable Weston Paris and Mrs. Paris, Speaker of the National Assembly and the President of the Nevis Island Assembly, Mr. and Mrs. Spencer Byron, members of the federal and Nevis government, members of the opposition, members of the diplomatic corps, including His Excellency Ambassador Shrike of France, Ambassador Eguchi of Japan, Ambassador Strader of Venezuela, our local ambassadors, His Excellency Dr. William Herbert, His Excellency Mr. Terence Byron, Canadian High Commissioner Mrs. Janet Sukowski, Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of Taiwan, Mr. Charles Tsai and Mrs. Tsai, His Lordship Mr. Justice Singh, members of the clergy, Mr. Maida of the Tobashiba Corporation, Mr. Jean Chauffeur of Dumes, Mr. Isidore Sharp of Four Seasons, permanent secretaries and other government officials, members of the business community, representatives of the various financial institutions, other distinguished guests from overseas and at home, ladies and gentlemen, friends. About 4 years ago, serious negotiations started between Dumes and the Nevis Island administration on the possibility of the construction of an upmarket hotel along the same lines that the Inns of Nevis were promoting, together with an 18-hole championship golf course. It was just over 2 years ago that negotiations were completed, and I was engaged in the groundbreaking ceremony where I laid the first stone to commence the construction of this magnificent, luxurious resort. That was an historic moment in industry in Nevis, because we had just opened the gate of golden opportunity in this country. Today, we have just entered the gate, and here we are with a 196-room hotel being operated by the ultimate in the operation of luxury resorts throughout the world. And I'm referring to none other than the illustrious company, Four Seasons. We have again entered the annals of Caribbean history. Just over 200 years ago, the first commercial hotel in the Caribbean, the Bath Hotel, was constructed in Nevis. And today we can boast the opening of the first five-star hotel in the region. The decision of the financiers of this resort to choose a small and relatively unknown island like Nevis for such a huge investment must not come as a big surprise. It is true that this country is a repository of natural beauty, history, and hospitality, which make the island irresistible to tourists and investors alike. However, a very significant factor which cannot be overemphasized is the distinctive tourism policy of this administration over the years, which established the framework and environment for tourism expansion. Government's policy of continuing the promotion of upmarket tourism, which is advocated by the Inns of Nevis as opposed to mass market tourism, is certainly paying off. Some islands in the region are already experiencing a decline in tourism revenues, because they have followed the path of mass market tourism, which resulted in social and environmental deterioration. In order to avert some of the mistakes made by other islands, we have been trying to increase tourism revenue while at the same time keeping the number of tourists to a level compatible with the developmental goals of this country. We are therefore trying to attract high-quality hotels which target the affluent clientele, and Four Seasons is definitely aiding government in the realization of this objective. It has also been government's policy to attract village rather than metropolitan-style hotels. We recognize the need to provide a different product for the tourists who come to us from countries with mostly high-rise hotels. The Four Seasons Hotel has maintained this style beautifully with its spread-out cottages. These are some of government's policies which have made Nevis attractive to luxurious resorts like the Four Seasons. When government finalized the agreement with Belmont Beach Resort to construct this hotel, the people of Nevis greeted the news with mixed feelings. Most people appeared very excited because of the potential benefits that could accrue to the island from the investment of over 80 million US dollars. However, there were others who were more cautious and expressed concern about the potential negative impact that a hotel of this magnitude could have on a small, unspoiled island like Nevis. I must admit that these concerns were justified because development brings with it social costs which are not easily quantifiable in economic terms. It is heartening, therefore, that the hotel has been constructed and is now operating with minimal disturbance to the society so far. However, we cannot afford to become complacent. We must continue to educate our people and to cooperate with government and the relevant authorities to avert potential social ills that could ruin our beloved country. Some people have also expressed concern about the numerous concessions that have been given to the resort. One must recognize that these concessions were necessary in order to help attract the institution to Nevis. Several countries throughout the world would have been delighted to attract a hotel of such high international repute to their shores. The concessions we have granted to the resort are similar to what any of the other countries competing for investment capital would have given to lure the investors into choosing their islands to build this gorgeous structure. Despite the many concerns raised by the general public, we have not lost in the bargain. The benefits to Nevis are manifold. The hotel has already employed about 500 locals, and the unemployment rate in the Nevis economy has been reduced to virtually nil. Restaurants and other hotels on the island have been deriving substantial benefits as a large number of guests at Four Seasons have been encouraged to dine out. During 1991, government expects to collect directly not less than over $1.5 million in accommodation tax from the Four Seasons Hotel. And in subsequent years, the amount is expected to increase to approximately $3 million. This increase in revenue will certainly help government to improve the infrastructure of the island so that we can continue to move forward to economic prosperity. Over the years, Nevisians on leaving school have been reluctant to pursue a career in the hotel industry, as much scope for development and advancement not provided in the smaller inns of Nevis. With the Four Seasons Hotel employing so many workers, government will be able to widen its education program and focus more on subject areas that will prepare our young people to take up top management positions in hotels in the years ahead. We are also hoping that the high standard of training provided by Four Seasons will filter down to the other areas in the private and public sectors, and hence improve the overall efficiency of labor in the country. Agriculture in Nevis has suffered over the years because of the inability of farmers to find a tangible market for their produce. The Four Seasons Hotel can now provide that market, at least partially. The onus is now on the farmers to improve the quality of their produce and work together with the agricultural department to exploit the opportunities that the Four Seasons Resort provides. With the opening of this resort, we do not claim to have attained the pinnacle of success. We cannot sit smugly behind the progress that has been achieved so far. The door must be kept open, and the pathway must be paved for the continuing economic advancement of this country. I am happy to report that potential investors are now being attracted to Nevis to exploit business opportunities. Government has already held preliminary discussions with another first-class hotel chain that is showing interest in starting operations in Nevis. This clearly demonstrates that the island has great potential for the future. Despite the tremendous opportunities that are being created, I must remind everyone that a key element in economic development is that the people of the country must be major participants in the development process. Foreigners can be and inevitably are involved as well, but they cannot be the whole story. Further, if growth in the economy only benefits a tiny, wealthy minority, whether domestic or foreign, it is not true development. It is our duty to ensure that the benefits derived from tourism expansion permeate every level of society. However, I must warn Nevisians that participation in the process of development does not only imply participation in the enjoyment of the benefits of development, but also the production of those benefits. In other words, one must produce first, then consume afterwards. I therefore appeal to all Nevisians to improve productivity. Some people have been criticizing the management of Four Seasons for filling most of the management positions with workers from overseas. One must recognize that the hotel has just started operating, and there is the need to fill key positions with trained and experienced workers in order to provide the high standard of service for which Four Seasons is renowned. However, the majority of these workers will be leaving after a period of 2 years, and a number of management positions will become vacant. Local people employed at the hotel must be patient and should utilize every opportunity to improve their management skills so that in the future they could prove themselves worthy and capable to take up more senior positions. I also appeal to the local businesses to start working together in order to maximize the benefits from tourism. The Nevis economy is performing fairly well, and a number of big businesses from outside are now trying to expand their operations into Nevis in order to penetrate the local market and create a niche for themselves. It means that the small local businesses could be faced with extreme competition and be forced out of the marketplace. Government is willing to offer assistance to protect the local businesses from unfair competition. But businessmen will also have to try and help themselves. It is time for the businessmen in Nevis to pool their resources and ideas together to ward off the threat posed by the large business concerns that are now setting up operations in Nevis. It is time for the service sector to improve the standard of its operations. The caliber of tourists being attracted to Nevis will need a high standard of service. If the service cannot be provided by Nevisians, then others will come in and try to take over the service industry. Let the Four Seasons Hotel be an example to all of us that we should be unstinting in our efforts to provide the standard of service which at least equals or even surpasses that of this, so that the tourists will feel compelled to book a return visit to the island even before they depart. The island of Nevis is small and has limited resources, but its people must be determined to move forward. One economist marveled at the success of Japan when he asked, how could a country with so little natural resources and about the size of one state in America develop into a world economic power? This lesson teaches us that we could be small in size and still be strong economically. But the equation of the Japanese success includes such variables as hard work, dedication, cooperation, and teamwork. Let us adopt these attributes and work together to make Nevis a better place for all. I must now take this opportunity to express the sincere gratitude of this administration to all those responsible for ensuring the success of this project. Special mention must be made of the investors, Jumes, Tobishima, and Four Seasons, who showed confidence in the Nevis Island government and readily agreed to make Nevis the first Caribbean island in which a five-star hotel is constructed. The late Fred Kelsick and Mr. Xavier Nice, who introduced Jumes to Nevis, must not be forgotten. The efforts of former ministers of the Nevis Island administration must be commended highly. And I speak of Mr. Arthur Evelyn, Mr. Uriel Swanston, and Mr. Ivor Stevens, who were actively involved in the initial negotiations with the investors to win the contract for Nevis. Congratulations are also extended to present ministers, the Honorable Victor Martin, Joseph Parry, and Phineas Griffin, for building on the foundation provided and seeing the project to completion. The construction workers, jalters, and local contractors must also be praised for building this hotel in record time. Lastly, I must thank the people of Nevis for their patience and understanding during the time this hotel was being built. The Nevis administration has worked untiringly over the years to improve the standard of living of the people of Nevis. We have been traveling through a tunnel filled with darkness, gloom, frustration, and disappointments. But we are now seeing a ray of light gleaming in the distance. The construction of this exquisite hotel does not signify the end to all of our problems, but the yoke of despair has been partly broken, and we can look to the future with confidence as we chart the course of this country into the 21st century. Let us build on this foundation, which could serve as a tremendous catalyst to economic development in this beautiful island we call the Queen of the Caribbean. I thank you.
Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel speaking at the opening of the Four Seasons Hotel back in 1991. And you have to remember the size of the investment. Because for Dr. Daniel and his government to attract a project which was worth in excess of 200 million EC dollars in the hard guava crop times of the late 80s was a fantastic achievement. And the government did that in the face of criticism from the opposition that the hotel would never happen, that down there would remain bush and swampland, and that the NRP was fooling people. Those were some of the rumors which were spread by the opposition party, which is now in government. But what is most significant is that His Excellency, our national hero, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, said that his government was already in talks with another first-class hotel chain who was showing interest. I verily believe that the NRP would have delivered another hotel in another term. But the people of Nevis have a history of voting against themselves. And so in 1992 they voted against themselves. Since then, the party in power has promised 31 hotels. Not one has come to fruition. Listen, we have one more tape to play, and that is going to be the eulogy by Victor J. Martin at the funeral of Sir Simeon Daniel. That is coming up just now. We have a couple of minutes where we can take your calls before we get into that tape. But we'll be back after this. Hi, good afternoon, caller.
Hey, good afternoon, Kyle.
How are you today?
Good show, very good show.
Thank you.
Question: When Nevis became independent, how much money did the local government started with?
I think it's a Nevis went into independence together in 1983. I am told by the late Ivor Stevens, confirmed by Mr. Ural Swanston, that they started the government with a grand total of $250,000.
That's what I
250,000.
Right.
That's all the money that they had to effect all the work they had to do and ensure that they could pay civil servants.
And boy, and they use that money wisely.
Man.
They use that money wisely and built on it. Not only use it wisely, but they built on it. And they didn't have. I didn't hear them have no bank loans as now. And they were able to pay their civil servants. And the premier, he was a part of the government then, and he realized that, look, I can't attend to sink it, help sink it, and work in Nevis, so I am going to stay over Nevis and work on behalf of Division, Nevis people, right? It didn't involve too much with the federal government, because he realized that he has the people of Nevis to serve, and serve he did. When I listened to some of those tapes that was played here, boy, you know, it amazed me to know so many things that the late premier, under the leadership of the late premier, that NRP was able to do in such a short time. In such short time. It is really amazing to know how much they would have done. And one of the things that, you know, I admire about them again, I'll say again, I didn't hear of any loan, you know, the government would have owed any loan to this kind of magnitude that we have right now. And then, because they knew what they were doing, whenever they started a project, the project was complete. They start a project and the project complete. They didn't have no first phase, second phase, or third phase. The project was completed because they planned properly, even up to the leadership of the Premier Party. The NRP knew what they were going to do, what they are about to do, what they want to get done, and they planned it properly. So there was no first, second, and third phase in financing the project because they know what they were about to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. Yeah, $250,000 is what they started the government with. Imagine the present government used to get more than $6 million a month to run the affairs of Nevis. Simeon Daniel and his group of cabinet members got $250,000 to start the entire government, and they made it work. They made it work. And now we're talking about an island that is in excess of $600 million in debt and growing, because the present premier, under his watch, has seen the debt rise by more than $100 million in the time that he has been in office. I think he didn't learn too many lessons in terms of government from Dr. Daniel, which is quite unfortunate. Now listen, this program is going to finish at 4 o'clock, and the next clip that we have to play for you is going to take about 20 minutes. But before we do that, let's go to the phone lines and say good evening, caller. Good afternoon, sorry. Yeah.
Mr. Powell,
How are you?
I give God the glory. Listen, every time I have to hear the late Daniel, the Honorable, speech and what he would have done for Nevis, it grieves my heart when I hear who comes after being so critical. This man just didn't look after Nevis. He touched individual lives. Let me tell you my own story, and I have said it before, and I wouldn't stop saying it because he bring me from the edge back from the precipice. I had a matter, went to court, didn't have a dime to my name. Mr. Daniel advised me to cut me here, what I should wear to court, and how I should conduct myself in court. I did as he advised me. Plead guilty, and I will talk on your behalf. And when Mr. Daniel would have spoken on my behalf, the magistrate was able to say, well, this is not a bad young man. Mr. Daniel advised me to meet him at his office. I'm a child now, and at the time, me never been under no rules or regulations. So I went down to his office, took me upstairs, and I got a fatherly speech. Fast forward to when I was ready to buy land, Mr. Daniel again. So I'm here 45 years because this little piece of land came from Mr. Daniel. You know what upsets me most? The individual lives that that man has touched. People refuse to recognize it. People of my age and older refuse to tell the children and the grandchildren where he, not where we came from, where he brought us from. And that is sad. I am hopeful that one day we will do something more than discuss what they have in Charlestown. Because the word father of modern Nevis must have more meaning than just the words. I am hopeful that something more will be done. And I'm going to chip off to now his daughter has come back to rescue Nevis. I am calling on the Nevisians to recognize a Daniel is a Daniel. She is a chip off the old block. She deserves a chance. And when we are called to the polls, let us vote on her behalf. Let us vote on her father's behalf. Let us vote on NRP behalf. Because Nevis is Nevis because of the Right Honorable Dr. Simeon Daniel. Good afternoon and goodbye.
Well said. Thank you very much. The phone lines are still open. I tell you something that is still in my memory today. 1992, after the elections, I was on my way from Zion into Charlestown. And when I reached Market Shop, there were a number of CCM supporters, and they had this effigy of a black gorilla, and they had it tagged Sim Daniel. That's still in my memory. It still hurts. Hi, good afternoon, caller.
Yes, good afternoon. And Carlisle, I'm going to commend you highly for really bringing this anniversary of the great man, 2020 Vision Radio, and especially Mr. Parry, historian in his own right. And like he said, a lot of things he would have said, a lot of Nevisians, or let me extend it, people residing on Nevis, and I'll say especially the voters who usually vote or who intend to vote, I hope that they would have really listened to Mr. Parry. And by extension, they would have listened to the great man, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. I think it's a pity that CCM does not understand that government is continuous. And what would have left there? Like he wished the government well when he departed. That's how democracy worked. Those were his words. To cast aside unto this day, they're still casting aside anything that has anything to do with NRP, perhaps anything to do with Green. That is a travesty. Dialysis unit comes to mind, straight up and front on. The daughter of the great man has something to do with NRP, and the leader, Mr. Mark, but they call his name. The way we treat that lady as a Nevisian, the daughter of the Right Excellency Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, is atrocious. Again, I commend you and the powers that be for bringing this on air this afternoon. I thank you.
Thank you very much, and we thank Caribbean Global Voices as well for allowing us to be broadcast via your medium. There was somebody else who was calling in and who didn't get in. Caller, I want you to get in, please. Have another couple of minutes, and then I'm going to go to the next tape. So we're happy that that caller got back in. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Carlisle.
How are you today?
I am doing well. How about you?
I am getting better and better.
Carlisle,
It's mango season, so I'm
first
good.
and foremost, thank you so much for taking this bite out of your very busy time to put this program together. As I sat and have listened to all of this, and I think about the many Nevisians like myself who have spent a lot of time off this island, especially back in the days that we have heard talked about. We are now understanding how much we missed. Because Nevis doesn't seem to have ever been the same post-NRP. What has happened? And how are we going to help the younger people in our country understand what is happening today does not make any sense, and it can never be good for us. When I listened to Mr. Parry, my heart was full because he was my history teacher in high school, huh? So he's always been one of my loves next to my father. And he spoke with such eloquent delivery. Dr. Daniel spoke with such eloquent delivery. And Carlisle, I shake my head because I was one of the privileged ones to have known Dr. Daniel personally. He was a very close friend of my dad. I knew him when he was not living in Nevis, and I knew him after I came back here to live in Nevis. I sat down and had many lunches with him, many, many days. And when I think about Dr. Daniel's hand in the leadership of Nevis today, I want to understand, and I'm sure Dr. Daniel, wherever he is shaking his head, trying to figure out what happened. What did I miss? Where did I go wrong? Because as we go back into the archives and we listen to the history of Nevis, the thought processes, how the leaders then went about leading Nevis and doing and sacrificing so much of themselves for Nevis. We're not seeing that these days, Carlisle. So help me understand what happened and what are we going to teach our young people? What are we teaching them now? And what are we teaching them as to where to take this special home of ours as we go forward? Because things now go right. It's frightening where we're heading to. It's frightening to listen to. It's frightening to think about where we're heading when we watch the shenanigans that have been going on over Nevis. And I wish that Dr. Daniel, Mr. Swanston, Honorable Parry, yes, he's still here, but I wish they all will come back and talk. I wish they can all come back and talk to us and explain to us how they thought about what they did to make their decisions to help this little island grow into the beauty that it can be. The failures that we're seeing right now is just not making sense, and it's disheartening. It's really disheartening. And again, I just want to come back to you and say thank you so much. Those are the people who sacrificed, Carlisle, for us. And when I think about hearing about the Destiny Project and stuff like that, and knowing what persons like those persons and others did for Nevis to bring us to, Carlisle, look across the Caribbean. And maybe you're in a better position than I am to answer this question. How many islands across the Caribbean have the local citizens of that island or country owning some of the most prestigious acreage of lands across them? And now we have to be fearful that it's going to be taken away. the sacrifices that our leaders, when I look at the Bank of Nevis, Nevis has its own worldwide bank. The Bank of Nevis. Who did that? And there's so much that Nevisians have to be proud of that we're losing that grip on daily, weekly. We're losing that grip on. And so I just want to thank you for the reminders, Carlisle. And I am to hope that this program gets replayed over and over and over again. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you as well, caller. Listen, once I have energy and I'm around on the anniversary of the passing of His Excellency, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, I'll be here. If I have to talk for 2 hours, I'm not going to allow anybody else to try to write the history of Nevis and edit out the parts which were done to elevate Nevis by the NRP. I'm never ever going to allow anybody, such as the former Premier Van Samri, to say that when he took over Nevis, that Nevis was a blank page and leave it unchallenged. Makes no sense. Listen, we want to thank our callers. We're going to go into the last tape now, and once it starts, we're not going to stop it. So it's going to run for 23 minutes. This is Honorable Victor J. Martin doing the eulogy at the funeral of the national hero, Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel. If you know Victor Martin, you can sit back, not too far back, stay on the edge, because he's usually good, and at this funeral he was better than good. He was absolutely fantastic. So, here goes.
Those who walked to an unwelcome graveside, to the children, you who are an oasis of privacy to a father who spent his time in the glare of public scrutiny, and to all other members of the Daniel family, I adopt the greeting employed by the Apostle Paul in his famous letter to the Galatians. Grace be to you, and peace from Almighty God and from our Lord Jesus Christ. To the family, the nation stands with you. For we know and we understand that when melodies are born, God has a start. Family, I bring you a message from all the sons and daughters of Nevis, here in the homeland and abroad throughout the diaspora. The Nevisian people thank you for sharing the life of so great a man with all the nation. We remind you that Almighty God is our keeper, deliverer, and friend. And we say to you that in this hour of darkness, in this moment of sorrow, an omnipotent God is still able, still has the power to move mountains and to hide you from the rain. In the small and cozy village of Barnstead, on the 22nd day of August in the year of grace 1934, Job and Elvina Daniel, with pride and joy, gave thanks for the arrival of the sun. It was a Wednesday. Some of the elders in the village have noised an account of the naming of the boy. It is said that Job was a good and faithful animal. Job was also to become a prominent facilitator of tea parties throughout the island. Nevis people will understand that Job loved the canticles. The word was that he was fascinated in particular by the canticle known as Nunc Dimittis, or the Song of Simeon, derived from the book of Luke, in which the apostle tells the story of the occasion when Mary and Joseph took the baby boy to be baptized. A worshipper named Simeon was there, and he intoned these words, set out in the Book of Common Prayer, known to Anglicans everywhere. Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace according to thy word, for mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, to be a light to enlighten the Gentiles, and to be the glory of thy people. It was Job's vision that this son would come to do grand things and to be the glory of his people. Job named his son Simeon. That son, Simeon, came to possess an amazing majesty of character. Sim Daniel, truth be told, grew up in humble circumstances, but poverty was no match for his dreams. He once told me, walking on the bay road towards Portland in Bastia, that he would read anything, everything, and then he would imagine that Nevis could become those places of which he read. He regaled me with tales of walking from Jessups to Basler, and instead of the coconut trees, he would see the House of Commons on the Thames River in London. Sim Daniel was a complex man. He was known to assign persons to compartments of business, professional, or personal relationships, and few were they who could straddle all of these areas of his life. But with all persons, this was a man who showed a gracious humility and a charming dignity. Put simply, this man touched lives. This was a man who touched and changed lives, countless lives. St. Daniel was so fierce and proud to be a Nevisian. He understood and loved everything good about this land. The history, the humor, the food, the language, especially the simple expressions of slang. A good example, take it easy, Mr. Swanstone. He loved the dominoes, the beach, the fishing boats, boat farming, kite flying, the big drum, the masquerade, Christmas sports, the friendliness of the Nevisian people. This St. Thomas's Church on a hill. He loved Nevis cricket. He loved the magisterial views from Mankate Butt, where Job had his farm. He loved it all. Sim Daniel was not quick to give expansive expression to his thoughts, but when he did, his ideas were clear, straightforward, and born of an absolute conviction. They said people are drawn naturally to good leaders. It was the Honorable Ivor Alvin Stevens, of revered memory, who at an NRP convention at Guinness set out 4 reasons why Sim was a good leader. Sim, he said, cared for people. He was a man of compassion. In fact, it was a renowned business icon, Teddy Slack, of eternal memory, who in a conversation with Mr. Daniel of the Charleston Pier explained these memorable words. But, hey, Daniel, you really got a soft heart. You want to help everybody. And in his unique laconic style, Mr. Daniel's response was, what else I could do, sir? I found, secondly, that Sim Daniel had the capacity for an immovable focus. Sim Daniel, such a public person, actually tried to avoid public notice and had little interest in pomp and circumstance. Albert Stevens' third point was that Daniel had an awesome strength of spirit, which gave him the confidence to confront history. And finally, I've explained, Sim had a genuine sharpness of mind. In fact, it was the inimitable Irvin Bradley, a great friend who never failed to move Mr. Daniel to laughter, who made the claim that Sim Daniel was so sharp, he had the greatest capacity for anyone he knew to give the impression not to know things he well understood. Some say that was his lawyering skill. Make no mistake, Daniel loved the law. He was known as an expert in conveyancing. It is arguable that few attorneys on the island arranged the volume of transfers that Mr. Daniel did. You know, families tell their children of the midwife who handled their birth. In Nevis, families introduce their children to St. Daniel as a lawyer who put them on a plot of land. But let the records show also that Daniel throughout Eastern Caribbean was considered by the legal fraternity one of the finest probate attorneys we have known. In the year 1984, when he piloted the financial services legislation, he reported to the Nevis Island Assembly that 75% of the legal transactions on the island derived from real estate law. He admitted that he was pleased at the prospect that the lawyers would be able now to practice in a wider array of disciplines. But above all else, St. Daniel loved constitutional law and is widely and properly regarded as a prime framer and architect of the 1983 Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. Some weeks ago, Dr. Daniel came to North America for medical attention, and we spoke. He reminded me that Nevis lost its government in 1881, and that after 102 years, the 1983 Constitution provided Nevis with its own island administration, its own island assembly, and in Section 113 is enshrined the right to independence on its own. But he cautioned me. He said, you must not miss the other big point. The big point of which he was proud was that from that constitution, Nevis obtained its own consolidated fund and its own treasury to manage that fund. This is a constitution that was designed to be a beginning, a constitution that was supposed to be reviewed after 3 years. Whatever we think of it, it is a constitution that gives some sound to the Nevisian voice. It's a constitution that plants seed for Nevisians to water. After 29 years, it remains the supreme law of our land. It says something about the framers of the document. It says something about the flexibility of the provisions of the Constitution. St. Daniel entered politics with one objective: to stand up for the interests of an independent Nevis. Co-founder of the NRP, from 72 to 89, he was the chairman of the local council. From 75 to 83, he was a member of the Federal House of Assembly and was a federal minister of government from 80 to 89. From 83 to 92, he served as Premier of Nevis and member of the Island Assembly. It is St. Daniel who has the distinction of being the only politician in the history of Nevis to represent every single constituency on the island. 75 to 80, he represented St. George's and St. James. In 83, he was elected to St. Thomas's. In 84, he was federal rep for St. Thomas and St. James. In 87, he moved to St. John's as the island representative. And in 89, he was a representative for St. John's and St. Paul's. No other politician in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis, past the Caribbean, has contested and won elections in every single constituency. The records show, and the elders testify, that from Butlers to Bath, from Newcastle to New River, in every village, on some street, in some alley, on some hill, in some valley, Nevisians throughout the land were embracing and voting for this one man, Daniel. But if we say that Daniel was a leader, and we do, and he was, then we must remember that a general is a general because they are soldiers. It is right that we take, if even but a moment, to remember those who walked the same darkness, who tilled the same soil, who walked at morning with the same desire. We remember the most honorable Ivor Algernon Stevens, with reverence. We hold high the hands of our brother after evening. We ask history to include the name of Ewan Swanson. We remember our ladies, Tabitha Jeffers, Georgette Sigos, our most worthy sister, the Honorable Burden Clark of constant memory. We register the presence of Ron Lyman and Gilbert Phillips. We whisper with a prayer of thanksgiving the names of those pioneers who prepared and planted the ground for us and who since have entered the gates of Jericho before us. Eustace Kessie, Ralph Harris, yes. Horace Lyman, Ralph Harris, Horace Lyman, Sonny Paris, and our brother Levi Mona. And in our most recent dispensations, the current leader of our country, the Honorable Joseph Barry, Mr. Phineas Griffin, the same desire. We remember the most honorable Ivor Algernon Stevens with reverence. We hold high the hands of our brother after evening. We ask history to include the name of Ewan Swanson. We remember our ladies, Tabitha Jeffers, Georgette Sigos, our most worthy sister, the Honorable Burden Clark of constant memory. We register the presence of Ron Lyman and Gilbert Phillips. We whisper with a prayer of thanksgiving the names of those pioneers who prepared and planted the ground for us and who since have entered the gates of Jericho before us. Eustace Kessie, Ralph Harris, yes. Horace Lyman, Ralph Harris, Horace Lyman, Sonny Paris, and our brother Levi Mona. And in our most recent dispensations, the current leader of our country, the Honorable Joseph Barry, Mr. Phineas Griffin, our brother, Mr. Herman Lyman, and Mr. Julian Nisbet. But to Sim Daniel, politics was more than elections. Politics was about helping people. In his first speech in the Nevis Island Assembly in 1983, he argued that Nevis was not just an economy, Nevis was a society. He took inspiration from Washington. George Washington said, government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is a force. Dr. Lyman said that the force of government must rise from a vision. This was a vision to empower the visions. And so, my friends, Daniel thought that we needed to ensure that the government understood that where there was uncertainty, the government must bring belief. Where there was disillusion, government must be a force for hope. A force that brings all the people together for the common good, across backgrounds, across political allegiances. A force that offers justice and opportunity to all. Above all else, Daniel was determined that the government should help the Nevisian people feel good about themselves and about their land. And so he set out in a hurry to shape an Nevisian economy and society. I will say to you that it was the intention to indicate some of the things done by Daniel in government. I believe that the church has heard quite a lot about that. And so I will speak only of the Bank of Nevis, and then I will give you one other indication. St. Daniel, who had introduced the financial services regime to Nevis in 1984, in order to complement his services, thought he would bring an investment group together for the Bank of Nevis. In 1985, the bank was formed with a capitalization of $250,000. Today, the Bank of Nevis employs 60 persons, has a capitalization of $54 million, controlling 50% of the market size. The Bank of Nevis, from 1985 to 2010, disbursed loans totaling $300 million and has assets of $400 million. This contribution stands as yet another example of the vision of this man, Daniel. The other indication is that when St. Daniel came to office in 1980, 25% of Nevisian households had running water. When he left in 1992, 98% of Nevisian households had running water. We conclude by saying that the work of Daniel shows lessons in foresight, in courage, in patriotism, in gracious dignity. Today, the future of Nevis has a potential more dynamic than imagined a generation ago. Today, the memory remains. But it is a memory that ought to endure. For surely, my friends, we bring honor to ourselves and to our own land when we celebrate the memory of our noblest sons and daughters. There lingers the simple and undoubting conviction that such a noble son was Dr. Daniel, and that this majesty of character, this selfless devotion to the homeland, this life of public service should well commend this great man for posthumous consideration as the next national hero of St. Kitts. The last time I came to this church, it was for the funeral service of Job Daniel, the father of Simeon Daniel. It turned out to be the only time I saw Dr. Daniel shed tears. When we went to the graveside, I approached him. I inquired as to his welfare. I used a quintessentially Nevisian euphemism. You all right, sir? He understood. He gave me a response I did not expect. He said he was reminiscing not of Job Daniel, the father. He was thinking of Job Daniel as a man who lived his life in Barnstable. And he said to live your life in a small village like Barnstable and to do well, you have to be able to communicate, to trust people, to be decent and hardworking, and to mind your own business. He paused. He said to me, you have to be a good man. He said no more. But today, we can complete the thought. Today we say that a Daniel, a good man, came from Barnstable. A Daniel, a good man, did rise to change the trajectory of life for all our people, even those yet unborn. This Daniel, this good man, has heard the trumpet's call and is now on a journey across the river Jordan. He is chaperoned, we believe, by a cloud of angels. We usher him into St. Peter's Court, and we call him to the bar of higher service with our prayers, our thanks, and our commendations. His name was Simeon.
Thank you very much. Eloquently done by the Honorable Victor J. Martin. And we're thanking you for being a part of the program with us this afternoon and sharing in remembering His Excellency Dr. Sir Simeon Daniel, national hero, who left us on this date 14 years ago. Thanks again for joining us.